we're going to watch, otherwise Benjamin won't give me more $500 donos. We have to watch TYT versus Vivek. Literally, Benjamin emailed me this in order, clips of Cenk and Anna talking to Vivek Ramaswamy, which is actually phenomenal content. So, you know, we were going to go over this anyway.
Better than anybody else in this race.
So Vivek,
don't worry about that noise.
Then by definition, you're running against him. You are better than the best president.
Guys, I'm so committed to talking and not listening. I'm throwing my earbuds right now. I'm throwing them. I'm tossing them. Here's the problem with you personally. It's that you're miserable. You're wretched. You're a disgusting creature. You're slimy. Why are you slimy? It's because your body exudes the negativity that resides within your heart. And that negativity is because you follow a politics streamer, you listen to all the horrible things going on in the world, and then you jerk off. What are you doing about it? Be a participant in positive change. Be a part of the solution. You'll feel good, and your heart will radiate happiness, and all of the gremlin juice will slow off of your body like rain off roof tiles, okay? And you will be clean and beautiful. Progress.win/Vaush-Swain. There is training before the phone banking. It's easy. Every person who's ever emailed me about the phone banking or the canvassing has told me that they enjoyed doing it. It will be fun. You will have fun, and you will have a warm feeling in your heart whenever you hear about anything good which was a product of your behavior. Rack up the dub, folks. Get out there. Go, 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 go. Oh.
Why exactly would...
Good question. So yeah, Vivek Ramaswamy has no chance at actually being the Republican nominee. He is an insufferable little suck-up who made his money by defrauding investors. He basically wants to be Trump 2.0, no principles, just power. He clearly likes the applause. He is also very obviously a fascist, like more so than Trump. Trump is very applause-oriented. Vivek Ramaswamy is like incredibly Hitler-esque. Yeah, some people are saying he's trying to gun to be Trump's VP. I don't know if he will. I think it's more likely that Trump picks a woman than an Indian man for a variety of reasons. I think there are some people who like Vivek Ramaswamy, but the people who like Vivek are also people who already would have voted for Trump. Whereas Trump's biggest weakness right now is the fact that after revoking Roe v. Wade, the conservative Supreme Court basically shifted all American women like 5 to 7 points to the left. So I think the most likely VP pick is Donald Trump is going to run with a woman in the hopes of shoring up that demographic. I'd be very surprised if Vivek ends up being the pick, but, you know, I can't see the future.
Likely Republican voters decide to vote for you over the former president.
Yeah, look, I think that the more he's being...
If Vivek mentions birthing persons right now, he wins over the TYT demographic. Okay, that's enough. I'm not going to be petty about this. We know who the actual enemy is here.
Unjustly prosecuted and really attacked using the levers of the justice system, the more I felt a sense of obligation to stand up for what is right. And I also believe in judging based on results. What are the results that I ultimately judge a president by? Did you keep us out of wars? And did the economy grow under your watch? There's a lot of other things that matter too, but those are two easy metrics. And I said he was the best president of the 21st century. That's what I said in the debate stage. I stand by it. George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Donald Trump.
Credit where credit's due. Vivek's audio and video are great. Yeah, but why is it like 15 FPS?
It's not even close which one was the best one of the century. And so I respect him. And probably more than any other GOP presidential candidate, when I'm president, I will respect his legacy and honor it more than anybody else will, because I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it moves the country forward.
Yeah.
However, I have something that he does not. I am young. I have fresh legs. I think it's going to take somebody coming in from the outside to have the true fresh perspective to lead the America First movement to the next level. I think I can unite this country by reaching the next generation of young Americans that have lost all semblance of national pride. And I can give you statistics to back that up. I mean, 60% of young Americans today say they would sooner give up their right to vote than to give up their access to TikTok. We have a 25% recruitment deficit in the US military, less than 16%.
That is a real concern. The right to vote is one of those things that people don't really tend to appreciate, like in a direct like I bet you a lot of people would sell away their right to vote for $1,000. So if you imagine that, you could imagine like a wealthy dude going district to district and buying up people's right to vote, like spend maybe $1 billion, and then a Republican would never again lose, would never lose a federal election again. So it's one of those like externality things, I guess.
Of Gen Z says they're proud to be American. And I think there is no question which Republican candidate is, really which candidate period in this race is best reaching young voters at a large scale. We see it in college campuses across this country. And so, yes, I think I will be able to reach that next generation and inspire national pride in that next generation better than anybody else in this race.
So Vivek, you're saying,
don't worry about that noise.
Then by definition, you're running against him. You are better than the best president of the 21st century. And that the main reason why you're better than Donald Trump is because you're younger than Donald Trump. Am I understanding that right?
And because as a function of being younger, I'm going to be able to reach the next generation, reunite this country. And I do think that reuniting this country and reaching the next generation will be part of what allows us to take the American.
Did you guys see Vivek doing promotional work with was it Logan Paul? Where he was like trying to take a picture of him looking hard with Logan Paul or whatever? Did you guys see that? He's really trying to sell himself as the Zoomer candidate. Vivek Ramaswamy is in his TikTok era with, Jake Paul, not Jake Paul. Yeah, Jake Paul, whatever. Jake Paul is the more embarrassing of the two anyway, so it makes sense. I mean, they're both pretty embarrassing. So. Oh yeah, here we go. Oh yeah, dude. Look at that. I can't have the music playing. Dude, look at that. Oh my God. How come more politicians don't connect with the younger generations? Dude, look at Vivek's in it. How much do you think he paid for that? How many? 159,000 likes. This is apparently content now. This is what the Zoomers like. They like their dipshit doing a little finger wag. 10K? Is 10K it? If that's the case, I could get a promo with Jake Paul for all the good that would do me.
First agenda to the next level.
I got you, but
I won't be the
but you're
same
better
person,
than Donald Trump, right?
Well, I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I was the best candidate for the job. So yes, I believe
don't worry
I am
about
the
that
best
noise.
candidate for U.S. president. I think there are 2 America First candidates in the race, and I do think it has to be an America First candidate that leads the country forward. However, between it's the tried and true.
It's fine.
If you want tried and true, you go with Donald Trump. If you want the next generation with fresh legs to lead us forward, you go with me. And I think that that's going to be the successful formula that leads us to success in this race.
I'm going to follow up on something you said earlier. You said that you would pardon Donald Trump on these unjust charges. So if you pardon him on taking national secrets without permission, not returning them, lying to the FBI, et cetera, does that mean that Joe Biden is allowed to do the same thing? That he could just take national secrets, show them to anyone he likes? Even after he's president, he could just take the documents, bring them home, show them to anyone he likes? And maybe other people too, anyone who's got access to national secrets. Can they just show them to everyone? Or is it just a special privilege that Donald Trump gets to have because you like him?
Well, it is whether you like the law or not, I believe in this thing called the law. And the law does give what's that?
I say I'd love to see it because Donald Trump has broken about a dozen laws and you'd say you'd pardon him on every one of those criminal actions.
Well, it is true that a huge part of Vivek Ramaswamy's like presidential ticket proposal is like sucking Trump's dick. Like that's a huge part of what he's done. Like massive. That's like a huge part of his presentation is just I love Trump. I love Trump. I love Trump. I love Trump. Which is very weird behavior for somebody who's supposed to be running for president, Very strange.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think part of the reason why is that those laws that are alleged to be broken, I don't believe have been broken here. If I did believe that and believe it was definitive, then I wouldn't adopt the position that I do. Every case brought against him levels a novel legal theory never before used. So this
is factually untrue, obviously.
Particular case that you asked about, and I believe in getting into details. Details matter. If you're going to convict somebody criminally, yes, the details doggone well matter. So the Presidential Records Act explicitly lays out the criteria for what documents a prior president is and is not able to access. If you don't like the law, change the law. But part of the reason is that we already entrust the US president with making all kinds of incredible judgments, whether or not to use nuclear weapons on down. So yes, that same president we do entrust when leaving office with access.
He's the Gen Z candidate, but he can't swear. Yeah, I think it's really funny that he's trying to position himself as like the millennial candidate. He's super young, but he acts identically to all the other people in the race, because like he's a soulless cretin. You know, again, he made his money by defrauding shareholders. You know, it's like he's not even remotely culturally connected to young people. Corpo scum, corpo scum, corpo scum.
To those same records. The judges have interpreted it, and even in the Clinton sock drawer case, as it related to Bill Clinton, revealing undoubtedly classified information afterwards, a judge explicitly came down on interpreting that statute. So I've laid this out.
His 20 song list was an embarrassment. Oh, I remember that now. I remember the Vivek. We asked the 2024 candidates to pick the songs that stir their souls. Where's Vivek? Where are you, man? Lose Yourself by Eminem, #1. Rondo alla Turca, Mozart, #2. Centuries by Fall Out Boy, #3. Believer by Imagine Dragons, #4. Jolene by Dolly Parton. Thunder from Imagine Dragons. Dream On by Aerosmith. 2 Imagine Dragons songs. Dream On by Aerosmith, Passion of Plenty by Woody Guthrie. Dude, this would be like if somebody from Politico showed up to me, if I was running for president, somebody from Politico showed up to me and asked me to give my top songs, I would just put a gun in my mouth. Like, this is worse than what I would come up with. He wants to appeal to every single audience. Yeah, he wants to, like, rep the young crowd, but he knows the people who vote for him will be boomers, so he's putting Dolly Parton and Aerosmith on there. But he also wants to come across like an intellectual, so he's like, yeah, Mozart. Yeah, I listened to Lose Yourself and then Rondo alla Turca right next to each other, back to back. Just, at the moment, and then right into the piano, just... sociopathically selected songs. Yeah. Dolly is not boomer. No, they're not literally boomer. You know what I mean. He does not listen to Mozart. Nobody who says they listen to Mozart actually listens to Mozart. Anyone who listens to Mozart, who actually listens to Mozart, is aware of the fact that... Don't worry about that. Is aware of the fact that the cultural associations with claiming that you... Don't worry about it.
Detailed articles in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere.
Vaush be like, my top 5? Caravan Palace. No, it'd probably like, it would all be like, honestly, right now, at this moment, if you had to ask me, it would all be obviously Queens of the Stone Age, but also probably a lot of, how am I blanking right now? The main music guy for Fury. He's like one of the big like electro track OST people. He's like fucking god. Come on, Carpenter Brut. Yeah, Carpenter Brut.
Why am I bothering talking about it as opposed to legal scholars elsewhere? Let them debate it. My job is to unite this country, and I do not think it sets a good precedent when the president of the United States and the Justice Department under him uses police force to indict its political opponents in the middle of an election and then issue gag orders to say that that opponent during the presidential election can't even talk about that relevant set of issues. I just don't think that's a good precedent, and I don't want to see that in one direction or the other. That's wrong.
Do you believe it's a good precedent to implement a slate of fake electors to overturn the results of our democratic process and go against the will of the American voters?
So look, I think that there were serious issues that need to be discussed relating to election integrity. However, I would not have made those same judgments that Donald Trump did. This, though, belongs to the voters. This is a judgment for the
copyright. Nope, it's video game track.
Voters of this country, not a judgment for a justice system that lands people in prison as its ultimate goal, especially political opponents. I just think that's bad for the United States of America.
Okay.
So leave it to the voters. Trust the voters to make the decision of who governs.
Okay.
Instead of trying to take it out of the voters' hands. And I don't think that should be a controversial idea.
Yeah, it's definitely controversial because what you're saying is
leaving it to the voters is controversial.
No, not that. Hold on. Not that.
He's literally essentially saying that like political leaders should be made impossible to prosecute. Like that's essentially what he's saying. He's essentially saying like, oh, leave it to the voters, to bypass the criminal justice process completely and just let popular rule decide. He's also said he believes in law and order. These are two completely contradictory opinions.
broke
not that
laws, including going against the will of the American voters by implementing a slate of fake electors, which were noted as such in memos passed around within the Trump campaign. They were referred to as fake and fraudulent electors by Trump's co-conspirators. That is part of the evidence. Another piece of evidence that I think is compelling, to say the least, is that they had fake electors in the state of New Mexico, which had absolutely no pending litigation in regard to election fraud.
In a legal system, and if you want to go into the details of this, the First Amendment absolutely protects, and courts have held this for a long time, dating back to a case called Alvarez. I think it was in 2012, that political officials, including candidates for election, unfortunately, like it or not, have the First Amendment right not to tell the truth. That's just a fact. It's not something that we should necessarily.
So Donald Trump was lying. So Donald Trump was lying.
That's for the courts to decide. But what I'm telling you guys,
so then he should be tried. If it's for the courts to decide, and we live in a country of laws, and he's being charged with a very important criminal act.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm being extremely Adderall deprived right now. I'm going to calm it down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to recenter myself. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. I'm here. I'm here again. Okay, I'm back.
Why do you get to decide instead of the court system and say, oh, just let him off? Who cares what that is?
Because nobody else has been charged under the same set of facts.
Because no one else tried to do a coup against America with a fake elector scheme. Do you know it's
yeah, like you get to get away with doing an insurrection because you were the first one to do it. What? What? Well, dude, how this is clear evidence of political prosecution pointing at my guy doing all these things for the first time. First place prize, yeah, true.
Second person who's ever been accused of that?
We've had contested elections dating back to the late 1800s in this country, and a lot.
Yeah, but no one ever did fake electors and tried to do a coup, Vivek. So are you saying, because this is really important, because good for the goose is good for the gander. So you're saying Joe Biden on his way out can take any national secrets and show them to anyone he likes. He could, maybe you could even sell them, whatever. He could just take them. Who cares?
He can sell them.
And hold on.
I'm pretty clear about this.
Okay.
Can't sell them.
Okay, all right. But if Donald Trump is charged with selling them, are we allowed to try him then, or do we just have to let him go no matter what he's charged with?
We're going to be on for most of an hour. So
does this count as a presidential debate? Yeah, I guess it does. This, yeah.
It's just important for you to understand something about me. I care about the details. Facts actually matter. I don't care about
the details
random
as well.
jousting.
And you just implemented a law having to do with political speech of a president and extended it to the actions of the president. If the actions of the president are criminal, he should be held to the same. Excuse me, I'm still speaking. Can you please let me finish my statement? Okay. If the actions of the president happen to be illegal actions,
man, this is why it's so disappointing that TYT is huffing a broken gas main, because when they do their shit, they know how to do their shit. My question, my problem with Anna Kasparian has never been that she's stupid. I guess outside of the extent to which inhaling the gas fumes makes you stupid.
In the context of our democratic process, you genuinely believe that that individual should not be held accountable for what he
sat his white ass down and listened.
Any former sitting president of the United States can attempt to steal elections, can attempt to implement fake electors, and go against the will of the American people. Is that what you're arguing here?
And I just want to address you correctly. What's your name?
I mean, you just came on my show. You don't know my name? My name's Anna.
I don't, actually. I thought I was talking to Cenk. What's your name?
My name is Anna.
Anna.
He's pulling the Emma Vigeland strategy, but I don't know if it's going to work here.
Good. No, we've been chatting for a while. I just wanted to address you conversationally.
Should have prepared for the interview ahead of time.
Well, Anna, you guys invited me on your show. I'm making some time for you guys. I'm happy to have the open debate. Let's get some facts actually straight here.
I thought you were detail oriented. I don't know. It's just you're the
one.
I didn't mean that as a personal affront, and I promise you, and I'm looking forward to getting into substance with you. So the reality is you're making an assertion that he broke the law. And then everything that you're doing is working backwards, making a legal judgment on a complex legal theory that has never been brought against a defendant in American history. So that's a circular reasoning. It's a circular loop.
No, it's not, Vivek. That doesn't make any.
What a catty bitch Vivek is being such a catty bitch. No, what he's being here is spineless. I think what you're seeing here is actually a consequence of the fact that his presidential strategy has mostly been sucking Trump's cock. He doesn't really have much experience in the political circuit being directly combative, you know? he loudly enunciates his talking points, which are he literally just has like, his thing is having like 15 talking points that he just reads without explaining, like refuses to elaborate, walks away, you know? And he's constantly sucking Trump's cock, as you know he's wont to do. So I don't actually think he has a well-developed sort of rhetorical strategy for dealing with people directly calling him on his shit. Does that make sense?
There's never been somebody
Vivek, we're not making
this legal theory.
But Vivek, you're going in circles. Hold on, let's be clear.
Nope.
So we're not making an assertion. Prosecutors are making that assertion. And you're saying, do not let the prosecutors do their job. Foreclose that. I don't want to discuss this. Hold on, let me finish. So can Joe Biden do a fake elector scheme and just make up electors and declare himself president as Donald Trump?
I really think the best way to handle politicians when they're being snakish is to handle it like Mehdi Hasan and interrupt them constantly. There's like a special gene or like an impulse you have to develop where every cell in your body is telling you to let them talk because it's like really rude to talk over them, and you have to ignore all of them, and you have to just keep talking and act like they're the ones who are being rude for trying to get a single word out. But this is very effective with politicians, especially, I think, because there are limits to the amount they can express outrage, because they have to be some degree of civil. There are like limitations on what they can do and can say. Donald Trump is pretty good at dealing with this, but usually when people are rude to him in interviews, he just gets up and walks out. And I've always thought people should be ruder.
Wanted to do, and you admitted earlier he is lying. Donald Trump was lying. And so can Joe Biden lie and say, I've got fake electors, and I'll even call them fake electors, and then you're not allowed to prosecute them because you just said, that's it. No one's allowed to prosecute former presidents. Go ahead. So is Joe Biden allowed to do the same exact thing Donald Trump?
Let me just ask you guys a question, because I think I'm getting a sense for your command of the details here. Which case would you like to talk about?
There are four pending cases.
Go ahead, fake electors. Is Joe Biden allowed to do the same fake electors?
One of you is talking about documents, and one of you is talking about
because he broke so many laws. But let's stick with fake electors. Go ahead.
Which one would you like to discuss?
Fake electors. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there is no crime here that can be charged. That's the answer. There's no relevant crime. Now, can voters?
How embarrassing for a person running for president to do a fairly high-profile interview, and the first subject he gets hung up on is defending his opponent. Like, seriously, this is a great shot, for one. Literally, like the first thing he gets hung up on is like trying to explain how the person he's supposed to be running against is like perfect and flawless and never did anything wrong.
Take this into account when determining who their next president is? Absolutely. That's exactly how our process works. But our Constitution has a process that has been followed, and it was followed here. And the US president, absolutely, even if he's the outgoing president, has an opportunity to share his opinion, even if those opinions are not true. And if that's found in a court of law, I don't have a view on that, but that's what the allegations are.
That's what a court of law is, Vivek, but you're saying we're not allowed to go to a court of law.
I'm not saying that you're not allowed to. I'm saying that I would pardon him because I think that these do not match.
This is temporarily restoring my faith in TYT. The problem with TYT, guys, you guys have to be nuanced, okay? The problem with TYT isn't that they became like Republicans or whatever. The problem is that there was a weird, like strangely rightward shift on some of the rhetoric they employed, stuff that was like really obviously bad. And then rather than engage constructively with any criticism of it, they burnt bridges and attacked people over disagreeing with them. They attacked former coworkers. I reached out to Kasparian privately to try to resolve things. Will you guys stop whiplashing back and forth between like the perceived position of one, TYT is like completely reprehensible in every way and can do nothing right, which I've never said, and the other one, which is maybe I was too hard on them. No, we should be hard on them. We will keep being hard on them. We will never stop. However, this is pretty good. That's just simple position.
The actual law that the Supreme Court has held applying to these set of facts. And I think it's a bad judgment for the US Justice Department to bring this case because it divides the country and it sets an awful precedent that will now be used going forward for years unless we do something about it. Unless it takes a leader who actually
Just don't call retards, it never ends well. Just try to stop me.
This country. This is the new precedent in the United States of America. The new precedent is the party in power will look at who the opponent is and throw the legal statute book at them. That's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to find a crime and then decide whether or not you want to prosecute it according to the same standards you use for every American. That is not what's happening here. And there is little doubt that if Donald Trump were not running for president, they would not have brought these charges. So I think that if you ask me, does this move towards uniting the country or not? I think it does not. I think it moves towards dividing the country, which is why I have been clear, even though I'm running against Donald Trump, I would pardon him if I'm elected president, because that will move this nation forward. And I do not think that we should be guided by vengeance and grievance against one man. I do not think that that helps the United States of America.
God, Ford pardoning Nixon, just like country, we do not believe in accountability for political leaders. Again, keep in mind, he is running against Trump here. This person is allegedly supposed to be running against Trump.
America. That's why I'm in this race, and that's why I clearly answer your question. You asked me, why would I pardon? That's why I would pardon.
And just to be clear, you have absolutely no problem with the Trump campaign implementing fake electors in the state of New Mexico, which had no pending litigation in regard to election fraud. You're okay with that?
There is a difference between what I've made the same
judgment.
judgment.
Yes or no?
I don't think that's illegal. I do not think,
you don't think that's
anything
illegal.
That's been laid out.
Okay, you don't value our democratic process. Great to hear it.
Anything that's laid out has been a violation of the law. That's what I believe.
That's amazing. Okay. All right.
Amazing.
Thanks for watching.
Okay, this is quality content. We're watching the whole playlist. At least I think we are, unless it gets really boring. But so far, so great.
You would like to disenfranchise voters between the ages of 18 and 25.
Wrong.
You want to increase the voting age to 25 years old. Why do you want to do that?
Well, I don't want to disenfranchise anybody, but I do think that we need to revive civic duty in this country.
Duty?
So right now, I think we suffer a crisis of national pride in the United States of America. So the same logic that we apply to
this is like a very easy Hitler check. This is like easy 101 Hitler check. If somebody genuinely thinks that the complicated like political network of problems a country faces can be boiled down to or in any way addressed by we need more pride in our country, they are Hitler. They are Adolf Hitler. They are Hitler. Hitler.
Immigrants who want to come to this country, to say that you have to know something about the country before you vote in that country. I think it is fair to apply that same logic to somebody who turns 18 and acquires their citizenship that way. And if not that, then at least to serve the country in some minimal way. So if you ask me, are we better off or worse off as a nation if every high school senior has to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen?
Vaush, I fully agree with Vivek. We should restrict voting to those with college degrees. True! Unironically, yeah. You do that shit, it's like every election 90-10 Democrat sweep across the board instantly. Like, oh, we want to restrict political access to education, huh? I can't vote then? Don't worry, I could. Yeah, that'd be pretty good. Obviously, the only reason you would actually want, the only consequence of a mandatory citizenship test that would enfranchise you, the only like actual practical consequence of that would be that poor people are less likely to be able to vote. That's it. Like that is it. That's it. No matter how high your ideals might be, no matter how like lofty your conception of how it might be, the only practical outcome would be poor people diminishing their relative likelihood of voting. The reason why he only wants this to apply to young people, by the way, is because he's terrified of young people voting, because young people vote Democrat. Now, if you had a test that you had to pass in order to be able to vote, and it applied to every single person at every age, that would actually benefit us, because a huge number of Republican voters are, you know, rural, lower class, educationally disenfranchised. On average, Republican voters tend to be wealthier, but rural voters tend to have lower access to education. It's complicated. The average Democrat voter is poorer than the average Republican voter, but that's also because very wealthy people almost always vote Republican, which skews the numbers. Very poor people are often Republican, though not always. Again, it's really a matter of rural poor versus urban poor. Does that make sense? There would be a lot of Republican voters who wouldn't be able to pass that civic test. Not to mention, most of the Republicans that I've come in contact with and talked to are retarded, you know? Like, they don't know anything about this country. There's a reason why history majors are the most Democrat-leaning college majors in existence. Like, that is the major with the most Democrats proportionally. So, yeah, I don't think conservatives would do very well with civics tests either. Yeah. They would say, like, communists wrote this test because they would be asked, like, questions about slavery or whatever, and they'd be like, what? Slavery? Did you know the Jews did the slaves? Also, blacks had it good back then, you know?
I think that will make our country stronger. I think that will make our country more united. I think that will make our voting populace more informed, people more proud to be an American. There was a 10-year-old girl.
I remember having this convo with Charlie Kirk, too, where he kept insisting that the purpose of education is to instill in people a sense of pride in their country, which is like the most Hitlerite shit imaginable.
Who approached me in Iowa last week, having heard about this policy and some of the criticisms from the left and otherwise. She printed out the 100-question test. She scored 100%.
That is literally the purpose of the Hitler Youth. Like, no shot, like, no joke. The first thing the Nazis did with regards to public education was they restructured it to be about national pride, and they created the Hitlerjugend to get, like, 5-year-olds running around with their own little Luger pistols screeching about how the Aryan race used to be 12 feet tall or whatever.
60% is a passing score. If a 10-year-old girl in Iowa can do it, yes, every high school senior can and should too. And that's not a Republican idea or a Democrat idea. Now, I personally believe that voting rates amongst young Americans will actually skyrocket once we revive that sense of civic pride and civic duty.
He's completely lying here. This is a lie. The only purpose of this policy is to make it so less young people vote. That's it.
I also favor making Election Day a national holiday. We should make voting
good.
in this country a civic ritual, that it should mean something. It unites us to say that we take the time to know about our country, our Constitution, and then participate in our republic.
I do want people to know more about how our country functions. I just don't believe in gatekeeping the right to vote behind that test. I do believe in making voting day a national holiday. The fact that it's not is insane, by the way. Actually insane that it's not. I do think it should be like a national ritual, you know, like a civic ritual. I would love it if every voting day there were like gigantic American flags hanging from every light post above your main street, where like there's people playing out in the streets and there's like hot dog stands everywhere and bands and parades and marches. And I would love it if it was like a major event. But again, Republicans historically have wanted less voter participation, because the more voter participation there is, the more that disproportionately gets Democrats involved. And
so I'm not saying you have to agree with me on that, but I do think that if you're not going to agree with me on that, then I challenge you to find a better idea, and I'm open to it myself, for how we revive that missing civic pride in our country.
It's not about
pride. One way or another, we're going to have to think outside of the existing box to do it, and that's part of where I'm leading the way.
So Vivek, I want to ask a follow-up on that. I have an idea that I've discussed on the show before. I think that after people leave high school, they can go to the military.
The idea that like the most powerful country in the world has its voting day on, it can just be on a fucking Wednesday, and it's like you worked a double shift and like, oh, you get off work at 8 p.m. that day. Sorry, you can't vote. Like, yeah, you could have done a mail-in vote, but Republicans want to make mail-in voting illegal. So like, what? Isn't it always a Tuesday? I forget. Our elections are on a Sunday? I forget. I don't know. I mail-in vote. Don't ask me when voting days are. Okay, I mail that shit in way ahead of time.
Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, et cetera. I think it unites the country. So I understand I have a different idea.
I think that's interesting.
Okay, now in terms of the, you say they need to know civics, but you know that if you knew civics, that this country also has a history of poll taxes, literacy tests, et cetera, to specifically disenfranchise some voters. And so, and you know that the Republicans are losing under 25-year-old voters in a massive way, and that is absolutely clear based on the demographics, on the polling information. So it looks really convenient that all of a sudden you don't want as many young voters, et cetera. But here comes the question. So
Cenk and Anna are hitting on like every point that I would want them to hit on. They are so far killing it. I can tell they really prepared for this, like full credit here.
If we did your literacy test, your civics test, and it turned out that 80% of Republicans don't pass it, but 60% of Democrats do pass it. So it's a massive, massive disadvantage for Republicans. You just can't get your ignorant young folks, it's hypothetical, ignorant young folks that are Republicans to pass any of these tests. Are you still okay with saying, no, 80% of Republican voters that are young, you can't vote because you're too ignorant?
I'm okay with it regardless. And I think that the reason we applied the standard is—
okay, he has to say this, of course, because if he just admitted, I would not accept an outcome that wasn't favorable to my side, like obviously that would be unacceptable. So yeah, like don't believe his fake posturing here.
Think about the logic. The poll taxes, a lot of those were made with the explicit purpose of disenfranchising specific groups of people.
Kind of like how Republicans right before the 2020 election took away voting booths from majority black counties all across Texas. And if we add up the potential votes that might have been taken It's very, very possible that that might have been like a properly purple state, like a real contested state. And the drop-off boxes, yeah.
At a point in our national history when we were coming off of some inequitable treatment historically in the eyes of the law. Thankfully, we've moved forward this country many decades past where we were even in the civil rights movement. Now today, I will remind you, there's a reason why we require every immigrant to this country to know those things before they vote. That's a good thing, by the way. I think that's important. But that same logic.
I actually don't think so. I think that's unfair as if dumb who are born here get to vote just by virtue of their moms squatting in a bathtub and shitting them out like in here, then immigrants shouldn't have to spend 20 years waiting and then pass a fucking history test. You know, whatever process for immigration we have, like the idea that immigrants have to demonstrate a higher understanding of our civic process than domestic citizens is really weird to me. It doesn't seem fair.
If an immigrant has to know it in order to vote, I don't think it is wrong to say no matter what your skin color or what your political affiliation, you should know the same things about the country at minimum to vote. Okay. And to those for whom you say tests aren't everything, there's a separate point I've built in. 6 months of service to the country in a first responder role or a military role. But the point is, you've got to have some skin in the game, or else you really have no way to play in the game. I think English should be the only language.
No.
So Vivek,
if you don't know that there is no such thing as fake,
I would be okay with the federal government having some kind of like New Deal-esque renewal program be an employment option for like fresh graduates of high school, but not making it mandatory. Like basically, if you've just graduated and you want to get a job, you know, like you could go do like some minimum wage work, or you could get minimum wage being part of like the reclamation corps, you know, clean up trash along the highway, maybe like do some very low, not low effort, but like low risk work in construction sites, like maybe clearing, you know, debris or like just stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think it'd be pretty cool. There's a lot of work that could be done. I'm sure the federal government could find plenty of use for young people. Certainly not soldiers, and not mandatory.
Electors, then I guess we would disqualify almost all Republican voters, right?
Look, I think that you could take that civics test, see how you do. I challenge you to do it. My sense is my guess.
Never understood why you have to actively register to vote here in America to disenfranchise poor people and people of color. That's literally it. Every single barrier to voting, every barrier to voting, no matter what, always has the same outcome. And it's people who are weak are less likely to overcome that barrier. No matter how easy it might be, the more poor you are, the more likely it is you fail to overcome that barrier. Even if it's only 1% of poor people, that's still like millions of people taken off the, you know, removed from the running, basically. So every barrier helps the Republicans, which is why we should have as few barriers in as possible. Everyone should be registered to vote by default. Election day should be, like, think about the election day holiday thing. How do you think it is with, like, poor people are the ones least likely to be able to, take the day off to vote or like have the time to vote or whatever. Like, what if you're a single mom who has 2 kids to manage and you have a job to work and you have to pick your kids up from school? It's like, holy shit, where are you going to vote? And then keep in mind, it's like, oh, you can do mail-in voting, but Republicans want to make that illegal, you know?
You'd probably do pretty well.
I already took it. I'm a naturalized citizen, so yes,
good. So I crushed it.
You'd have a different. And I guarantee you, I would do much better.
You yourself were an immigrant to this country. Great.
Yes.
My sense is that many people find this a little too frightening until they take a look at it. And then you say, hey, if somebody's voting for president of the United States, do we think it's important that they know what branch of government the US president leads? I think most people,
the average American doesn't know that shit now.
I think that's a legitimate thing.
I don't think Donald Trump knows that. Are you positive Donald Trump would pass your test? He took a dementia test and thought it was an IQ test. He thinks you could suspend the Constitution for no reason.
I think you guys have an obsession.
He thinks you could do martial law. I'm sorry, that's the greatest president of the 21st century.
I think I'm interested in the future of the country, but I'm not interested in particularly psychoanalyzing another individual who seems to be your obsession for the day.
You don't understand, okay? My election goal is to suck Donald Trump's cock, all right? Not to talk about him, okay? I'm not here to talk about Donald Trump. I'm here to throat his dick. Gluck, gluck, gluck.
Base stage that the other candidates were bought and paid for. Now that's a thing that I very much agree with, and not just about Republicans.
Gluck.
So, but you seem to have waffled on that from debate to debate. But we're here so you can clarify. So when you say bought and paid for, what do you mean by it?
Yeah, I mean that these are actually mostly, as I've gotten to know them, it's less waffling, but more my view has evolved a little bit. I actually think that most of them, not all of them, but most of them are good people, but they have been tainted by a broken system. So what do I mean by that? I mean, it's a lie that there's actual limits to what you can give to a political candidate. The myth is you can only give $3,300 per cycle in the primary and in the general election. That's false. The reality is most of the election, look at the primary, look at elections these days, period. They're being run by super PACs. That's where most of the money is being spent. And big donors can give.
Reminder, if you're watching this, that if you type !Alabama into chat, you can see the link, progress.win/Vaush-Swain, and you can go and sign up with Progressive Victory to Phone Bank, which is very easy and fun, and everyone loves it, and you'll have a great time. And you can get the very first trans state rep elected in the state of Alabama in a quick special election. Guys, the results for this primary they're going to be in just 1 week, actually 6 days from now. So we have 6 days to interject into the state election as a group of, at least in my case, coastal elites, sticking our fat cat hand into the affairs of local Alabama politics to say, yes, you will have a trans state representative. So go over there and make sure to sign up. It's very good. Apparently, we already have over 150 people who have signed up, which is like insane. So make sure to get in there.
Limited money to super PACs. And even though those super PACs are basically running the campaigns, that's corrupt. And so I think it is a lie that we have the system. You know, $6,600 is a limit. That's a lot of money to most people in the country, and fair enough.
We
but
love our
giga
passwords, don't we, folks?
a politician with $6,600. That's why we have that limit. And yet, what you actually have is the real system that does control the politicians, which are the super PACs.
But flying to Alabama from Amsterdam is too far, Vaush. Good thing it's phone banking then. Phone lines travel very quickly for information.
Technically, these independent agencies or these independent entities that are spending that money, but they're not really independent when the candidates themselves show up at the fundraisers hosted by the super PACs, regularly talk to donors on speed dial who are giving to those super PACs, turns the politicians into circus monkeys. And is the circus monkey a bad monkey? No, it's not. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. It jumps as high as its master tells it to jump. That's the way.
It doesn't let you sign up if you're not American. Oh, never mind. All non-Americans get out. Get out. Get out.
Our political system is run, frankly, in both parties. And so I think that that's a cancer on American politics. Whether or not I agree with the policies that come out of your mouth as a politician, I'd rather they at least be the views that actually represent yourself or the voters you're running to represent, not the donors who are providing your mother's milk. And I think this is hopefully a nonpartisan point that we can agree on. This used to be a calling card on the left. I'm trying to make this part of the America First movement on the right, and I'm actually getting a lot of grassroots support for it. But the donor class does not like me talking about this, and that's why they've come down on me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but so just to be clear, so Nikki Haley and others are circus monkeys who are corrupt.
I think that the people who are running in the Republican primary, whose money is principally funded by super PACs, are really just vessels for their super PACs. That includes Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, anybody whose campaign is principally being spent via their super PAC rather than
I wonder if there are any other candidates that have a bunch of money and corporate interests. Maybe a political candidate so corrupt that when becoming president, they became the first president in U.S. history to not divest their businesses, thereby openly acknowledging a conflict of interest wherein they might engage in policymaking to directly benefit their own industries, which they then provably did.
Their campaign. It's just a fact. That's the way it works.
You use stronger language about this, which I agreed with during your interview with Sean Hannity. I want to give the audience a little snippet of what you had to say. Let's take a look.
Why would you accuse Nikki Haley of being corrupt? I don't believe that somebody should be able to be the next commander-in-chief if they have monetized their time in government, going from being in debt to making $8 million through military contracting businesses, through service on the board of Boeing. Frankly, it is shameful for somebody to be collecting stock options from corporate boards while they're running for US president.
Totally agree with you 1,000% on that. And I commend you for bringing the issue of corruption and legalized bribery to the forefront of the GOP primary debates. I do have to ask, though, one of the issues that was reported on widely during the Trump administration was how he was directing official government business to Trump properties and then inflating the prices of the hotel stays for government officials and members of the military in order to pad his.
Yeah, that was pretty fucking wildly corrupt, wasn't it? Hey, I'm not going to divest my businesses and I'm going to direct government resources directly to properties I own. Oh, This your stay at this resort that I own, why, it'll be $11 squidillion on the government's dime, of course.
Pockets. Did you at all have a problem with that?
So have those facts been reported in the same way that these other facts have been? I don't know. My question, though, and my answer is, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, you should not use your government connections to make money, period. And so what does that mean? 10-year ban on lobbying? I favor it. If you leave the government, you should not be able to lobby the government for more than 10 years. Bans on trading individual stocks while you're a member of Congress or anybody else that has information that could move those stocks, that builds public trust. You shouldn't be trading stocks as a government leader or a congressman or a
What about failing to divest your businesses?
Bureaucrat regulating an industry. If you're regulating an industry, should you be able to join the board of a company in that industry? That was the Nikki Haley example I referenced. She did a special deal for Boeing in South Carolina while she was governor, later goes on to join the board of Boeing, a defense contractor. Is on the UN, uses connections to generate a lot of military industrial complex connections. Her family then goes off to start a military.
Republican voters do actually support the anti-corruption. Yeah, everyone supports anti-corruption concept. There's no human on earth who's like, yeah, I'm for the pro-corruption ticket. That's not a real thing, you know? The problem is that Republicans then vote for the most corrupt dipshits in the universe, like right after that, you know? That's like asking a person whether or not they support bad things. Like, no one's going to say that. Except for the Greeks? Yeah, except for the Greeks, I guess. Here's the PAC helping Vivek. Yeah, a lot of Vivek's money is independent, though. But it's because he, like, defrauded the investors. So. American Exceptionalism PAC. Nice. Literally just called the American Exceptionalism PAC. Just Manifest Destiny PAC.
Contractor. So any way of using your government connections to make more money, I think should be banned. Right now, it's not banned. So it's not that people are breaking the law by doing it. But I think it is especially bad when some of those same people then come back and run for US president. And that's why I think the reason I've dialed this up now is that it's one thing if that was just politics as usual. Right now, we're escalating our path to World War III, which I genuinely worry about as a major risk going forward. And so, no, I don't think that somebody who has a demonstrated track record of potentially making money on taking us to World War III should get anywhere near the White House, which is why I've been particularly sharp about this issue, even relative to the first few months of this campaign, when those foreign policy threats weren't quite as pronounced.
All right, we continue to agree on that. So if someone, for example, was in charge of the Middle East policy in an administration, and then they
dude, they're like laser focused. Cred where creds do, man. But like I'm thinking in my brain right now, like you got to bring up Jared, right? You got to bring up Jared, right?
Administration, and immediately got $2 billion from someone that's in the Middle East,
the
country that's in the
Kushmaster.
Middle East, that they were in charge of handling policy on, and might have even, according to some rumors, passed intelligence on to. That obviously shouldn't be allowed to happen. That is massive corruption, right?
Okay, predict the response. Is he going to deflect by answering another question that wasn't asked? Is he going to say, you guys are obsessed with Trump? Is he going to say, well, I don't know about the details of any of that, but hypothetically, if that did happen, and I don't know what you're referring to, but if that did happen, that would be kind of bad, I guess. What is his response going to be?
Well, if somebody is running for president who fits that description, you let me know.
Yes. Yes. Well, hypothetically, if that was hypothetically to happen, you know, maybe I guess I would. You just let me know if that ever happens, haha.
No, but I've been calling out the people who are running for president.
So that's Jared Kushner.
Who do?
Jared Kushner. So are you okay with that, or is?
I mean, if I'm judging the first half of this interview as extrapolation to the second, I can't verify all of the facts that you're.
The $2 billion. We know he has the
referring to there. I'm giving you a very clear litmus test. Politicians in either party should not make money off of their time in public service beyond the salary that they're paid. That's a general principle, and we should apply it evenly across both political parties. But where I am up on the details is the people I'm running for president against. Facts matter, and those are the ones where I have been expressly vocal that nobody who fits that description should be taking us into World War III.
If we found out that the Saudis decided to buy the PGA and funnel all of or a lot of the tournaments to, coincidentally, Donald Trump's golf courses, right after he was in charge of policy with Saudi Arabia, you would be outraged by.
Really regretting the interview about now.
So I don't understand this game of innuendo. I have no idea what.
See, look, he's like, he's doing the guy incognito. I have no idea what you mean. This Jared Kushner. I have not heard any of the facts associated with this most curious dilemma you have presented me. I am anti-corruption. Just don't ask me about any actual corruption that's happened by the guy whose cock I like sucking.
What facts you're referring to or not.
Okay, here, I'll give you another one. Because, okay, so you're saying hypotheticals, that's actually what's happening in the real world. But I'll give you another one. You said earlier that you're opposed to people taking super PAC money and you think that's corrupting and it makes them circus monkeys. Again, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, okay? So Sheldon Adelson gave over $100 million to pro-Trump super PACs, and then Donald Trump did all the things that Sheldon Adelson asked him to do, including getting rid of corruption charges on him, including fighting against unions, including bringing back money from abroad. Sheldon Adelson's main money was in China, in Macau casinos, where he was able to bring it back at 8%.
Be with you. This is the system in both political parties that needs to end. Now, what did I say? From everybody, even the people I'm running against in this race, it is legal within the bounds of the law. I think we need to change the law so that we have an even-handed system where you don't have a special class of mega donor billionaires.
He's doing so poorly. Yeah, that's why like stuff like this is really special and why it's really important to be able to tear down people like this. Because politicians who are this cucked do not do well with direct interviews. Like, this is why most politicians will only accept interviews from like CNN or what, like they'll only accept interviews from like stuffy, like, you know, Harvard educated, rootin' tootin' bitches, basically. Because if you actually directly, aggressively challenge their positions, they fall apart pretty easily. Vivek made a huge mistake agreeing to this. This is really dumb. Why'd this guy accept the TYT invite? Well, I can't read minds. My guess is that Vivek is overconfident. You know, he's young, he's barely older than I am, he's a smarmy piece of shit. Like, he very obviously has a high opinion of himself. He's probably just like an empty sociopath who craves power, probably thought that he could just use this as another platform. I don't think this is going very well for him.
Influencing what politicians do.
Okay, so you are clear. So you're saying it does apply to Trump. So Trump
literally me
when he took his super PACs took over $100 million in both elections from Sheldon Adelson.
I said the same thing I said at the very beginning. It is legal, and that's why we need to change it. We need to change the system where you do not want people to effectively have disproportionate influence on their politicians.
So
I think I agree on that. Change the law. What's the game you're trying to play?
Because he's like, this is bad because it's corrupt. And Cenk is like, well, here's 50 examples of Trump doing this thing. And Vivek's like, well, if that happened, I guess, I don't know, that'd be bad, I guess. So Cenk's like, okay, so you are saying then that he is corrupt, that Donald Trump is corrupt. And Vivek's like, what? Why are you asking me to be consistent with my position? Why are you asking me to follow the logical conclusion of my beliefs in a direction that would lead me to criticize Donald Trump, the person whose cock is currently in my throat?
I'm just trying to understand.
It is a corrupt system.
And Donald Trump participated in that corrupt system and is part of that corruption. That's okay. You're running against him. There's nothing wrong with that. I agree with you.
I really don't. The level of obsession. I mean, the Trump derangement syndrome. It's really sad.
He's polling at 59%, brother. You're polling at 7%. What do you mean a Trump derangement syndrome?
Not only that. Look, in this country.
But Vivek, you're running against. He's the number
one.
He's
running against him, bro. Imagine saying Trump derangement syndrome when you're running against him. You're trying to primary him.
Republican candidate, you're running against him. What do you mean obsession?
It's just befuddling that you refuse to call him out on anything.
How many times has George Soros' son visited Joe Biden?
Yep. And the moment they get flustered and realize that they don't have any way out of the conversation, they start the whataboutisms with just the insane train of conspiracy theories that they have lined up for situations like these.
Biden in the White House. How much
this guy has a Soros scholarship, yeah.
Probably too many times for comfort. Who cares?
My point is,
we have no problem with calling that out.
My point is, it's not useful because you could do this for every politician in America. That's the fact of the matter. And so, as I said in the beginning,
no, actually, Donald Trump is a lot more openly corrupt than any other politician in America. Like seriously, he was the president. He had more opportunities to be corrupt, and he's been so flagrantly corrupt with like no evident, like apparent attempt to hide any of it. You know,
these are good people tainted by a broken system. Some of them aren't even good people; they exploit it. But most of them, I've learned, are good people tainted by a broken system. Fix them.
Except Donald Trump was a maverick. The whole point of Donald Trump's presidential run was that he was an outsider who wasn't tainted by the system. And then he entered the system and did all the corruption, but like 10 times as much. And then and now Vivek is like, well, he's just an innocent cinnamon roll who was corrupted by the system that he wasn't a part of.
The system. I'm not running against any of those candidates. I know you want me to think I'm running against Trump. I'm not running against any.
I'm sorry? Is there another presidential primary that you are running in? Is there another? I'm sorry, I must have this confused. I thought you were. I guess, is this just him being masked off about him wanting to be VP? Like, dude, Jesus Christ.
Any of those candidates, I'm running against that system, and I think that that's something that probably on a day where you're in line with your
embarrassing, dude.
Someone needs to run against that system. It is going to take somebody who is willing to, and unfortunately the way that works today is every donor who dances to the tune of their biggest donor, every candidate who dances to the tune of their biggest donor, in my case, that biggest donor is me. And the reason I'm running is
I know who's going to shake up the system of corruption in Washington. A far-right venture capitalist who got his money by defrauding investors. Oh yeah, here we go. The anti-corruption ticket being led by Hitler. Jesus Christ.
Going to take someone for whom that's true to break that system, and I think we're going to be successful in doing it.
But we're not done. The remaining videos are shorter. This is fantastic.
Vivek, you propose cutting giant parts of the United States government at the federal level and at the executive level. So without getting into all of it, let me just name 3 of them: Department of Education, FBI, and IRS. So to most people, that sounds a little crazy. Are we not going to collect taxes? Are we not going to do law enforcement? So tell us why getting rid of the IRS, as an example, makes any sense at all.
Well, I think that's just an administrative reorganization. Downsize it, move it to the US Treasury so it's a revenue collection process. I can tell you about the FBI. I mean,
you want to get rid of the IRS by consolidating it with another administrative branch and what? But it's already. Am I getting gaslit? IRS, the Revenue Service for the federal government and an agency of the Department of the Treasury. I like how effortless that was for him. Like he runs on, yeah, we'll get rid of the IRS, and then he's asked about it directly. And then he's like, oh yeah, well, we'll just make the IRS do tax collection and make them a part of the Department of Treasury. A simple reorganization. Yeah, this is incredible. Vivek is such an effective politician. He managed to reform the IRS to his goal without even being president yet. That's crazy.
I mean, this is the one I get a lot of questions about, and I think is the most understandable pushback that people have, and I can do the education one too. There's 35,000 employees at the FBI. 20,000 of them are in back office functions in the J. Edgar Hoover building and back offices in this bureau. They can go home and find honest work in the private sector.
I think the FBI has work that involves desk work. What? It's the FBI. Does he think every FBI person should just be like out in the field in like one of those windbreakers with the yellow letters? But they have paperwork to do. What do you mean? Like in the US military, for every one dude out there with a gun, there are like 5 dudes behind a desk somewhere. There's like logistics. What? Like it's like that. It's like that with the police as well.
But the 15,000 agents on the front line should be moved to agencies like the US Marshals or to the financial.
Why? Why? Why would they be moved to the marshals? Okay, keep in mind, the actual reason that he and Republicans are anti-FBI is because they don't want the FBI to be able to prosecute or investigate Trump or other fascists for crimes they engage in office. The FBI is basically the federal police department, and they're the ones with the authority, power, and reach to examine and investigate and provide evidence for charges against Republican leaders who would engage in insurrectionary behavior. This whole anti-FBI thing only cropped up when Donald Trump started getting charged for his involvement in January 6th. So all the bullshit he's saying about the FBI, it's literally just, I want to get rid of the police so I can't be arrested. It is no different from a serial killer being like, yeah, I don't think there should be police in this county because reasons, you know? Like, it's no, yeah. But they do other things, right? Well, yeah, it's the FBI. They do lots of stuff. But, like, they are the federal police department, basically. Like, that's the main thing that they are.
Crimes Enforcement Network at the U.S. Treasury or the DEA, where they will have far greater specialization and be much more effective than the agents are at the FBI, right?
And curiously, all of them would be moved to departments that don't have jurisdiction over investigating federal crimes pertaining to election fraud. Ah, yes, we simply want to redistribute all these FBI agents to other departments, which all just have no power. What the U.S. Marshals and the DEA can't go after you for insurrectionary behavior. After all, like, wonder why.
Now, in investigating child sex trafficking crimes, which the FBI has not been very good at, the U.S. Marshals has done a better job at. Specialized white-collar investigations, where people at the FBI lack the specialization that people at the U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network actually have. And this is also a way of addressing what I see as generational corruption in the FBI. The same Bureau of Investigation that used to go after the likes of Martin Luther King Jr., threatening him with suicide.
Yep, I'm sure you are truly just one more hero in a long line of civil rights advocates, you know? My opposition to the FBI, well, it's definitely not because I want to protect the fascists who tried to coup the election. You know, no, it's actually in memory of my mentor, Martin Luther King Jr.
Over improperly collected tapes is now going after individuals of a different political persuasion, and it was wrong then as it is wrong now.
Yep. See, right here, he's saying the FBI is bad because Hoover writing a letter to tell MLK to kill himself is the same as them investigating Donald Trump for crimes to try to end our democracy. Yep, it's all about that. It's crazy. This guy's entire existence is just cucking out to Trump. Everything that he wants, everything that he believes. It's just, how do I model my entire fucking rhetorical template to sucking dick? Suck, gluck, gluck.
Bureaucracy is a formula for breeding corruption. And I think the right answer is you can't just incrementally reform that. You have to shut it down, but do it in a pragmatic way that increases effectiveness while reducing cost and corruption. And same thing with the Department of Education, tilting the scales to 4-year college degrees over 1- or 2-year vocational programs, holding local schools hostage, saying you don't get that.
He wants to turn people away from degrees and towards vocational programs because people with vocational programs are less likely to vote Democrat. Vocational programs are good and all, but electricians and plumbers are way more likely to vote red than people with actual college degrees.
That money, unless you adopt certain agendas at the local level, that's not useful when the federal government has nothing to do with local education. I'd say shut it down. Give that $80 billion mostly back to the people, to parents, so that every parent can choose to send where their kids actually go to school. And
so this is a repackaging of 1960s era racist school policy. The idea of school choice and charter schools are basically about how do we abandon and stop funding poor inner city schools. The idea being, hey, if you want your child to have a good education, you better like pick them up and drive them over to the good schools that are funded by high property taxes in the region. The consequence of this is that inner city schools would like crumble because they would have no money and fewer students would go there. And the only ones who would still be going there are the ones for whom the parents are too busy or unavailable to actually drive them to the good schools, meaning that the educational cycle would get worse and worse. It's a way of creating inequality. Public education should be free and equal for everyone. It shouldn't even be funded on property taxes. There should be a set amount that every school gets per student in the area, with adjustments made in accordance with local costs and expenses associated with various upkeep. But the idea of it being funded by property taxes basically guarantees, like, yeah, you're in a rich area, you get good schooling. Bad area, you get bad schooling. That's it. You know? This is just busing 2.0. Yeah, it's essentially the same as the busing debate back in the 1960s. You know, one of the first times I heard about this, I was listening to Destiny talk about it, like, I don't know, a decade ago, where he was talking about his kid, Nathan, and schooling in the Omaha, Nebraska area, where the education was there because all the funding came from, like, property taxes in the area. So if you wanted to get good education, you basically had to go up to, like, it was like North Omaha. I know what area, the good area, and like the bad areas were completely like ruinous, you know, because the funding was so disproportionately distributed. Even in Beverly Hills, you know, the public education wasn't like spectacular good because a lot of the people in the area, a lot of like the students would go to private schools, and there's also been a push by conservatives at both a local and a federal level to put public money into private schooling. Remember that, I think it was in Maine, or it might have been in Maryland. It started with an M and it was in the Northeast. There was a ruling from the Supreme Court that essentially said, yeah, public tax money should actually also go to private religious schools. You know? You remember that? Anyway, it's cringe. Yeah, the ultimate goal of this is black people all go to shit underfunded schools, and public tax dollars are spent on, like, private Christian schools. Like, that's what they want, you know? No matter what they say they want, that is the outcome of their policy.
The tiny sliver that relates to vocational training that they've recently added, move that to the Department of Labor where it belongs. So yes, I do think it's going to take somebody with a CEO mindset, and if I may say, anti-bureaucracy experience, to come in and reorganize and gut much of that federal bureaucracy.
He's actually a proletarian hero again because he screwed over the shareholders.
That's not a left-wing idea or a right-wing idea, but it is a fundamentally American idea because we have 3 branches of government in the US Constitution: legislative, executive, and judicial.
Check out this absurd school in my city, less than 20 minutes away from the worst performing schools in the state. Is this going to be that Texas school?
High school. Join us on a tour.
Yeah, I've seen this.
This is the auditorium.
This is the Commons.
This is the catwalk. This is the planetarium.
This is senior hallway. This is Oklahoma High School library.
This is the Oz hallway. This is the Carmel Cafe and Market.
And by the way, to be clear, I think it's super based that these kids are going to, like, the schooling equivalent of a mega city, like, or a mega tower from Judge Dredd, you know? I think that's cool as hell. I'm not dissing that at all. The problem is that I know for an absolute fact that within a 30-minute drive of this school, there are probably like 5 hideously poor schools, you know? It's literally just about, like, the property taxes in the region.
This is the back of the Carmel Cafe.
And this is our Carmel Cafe where we have Teddy. And this is the Carmel Varsity Gym.
This is the new addition to the Hall of Fame. This is the freshman gym. This is the weight room.
This is the wrestling room, baby.
This is the blue and gold gym. This is the blue and gold track.
This is the field house.
This is the varsity tunnel.
This is part of our wall of...
This video is halfway done. I'm leaving it. This school has its own fucking code.
Not this 4th branch of the administrative state where most of the policymaking takes place today. And so I would say that's the top of my domestic agenda.
Wait, did he misspeak? It's not 4th branch of the administrative state. It's 4th branch of government, comma, the administrative state. Whatever.
Shut down that 4th branch, revive the integrity of our constitutional republic.
So the 4th branch that you're referring to consists of individuals, leadership at least, that's been appointed in the executive branch by the President of the United States. The Department of Education, of course, to give you an example, your favorite politician in the world, Donald Trump, appointed Betsy DeVos, and she engaged in the reversal of certain policies of the education department that did seek to help students who had been defrauded by for-profit colleges. So what do you propose happen?
Oh, like Trump University.
In a situation in which students have been defrauded by for-profit colleges like Phoenix Online, ITT Tech. They get an unaccredited nonsense degree that leads to nowhere. They're drowning in debt after being defrauded. How exactly would you deal with those situations with the elimination of the education department?
If it is a true case of fraud, that's a violation of the law. They can be prosecuted under the law. They can be sued in civil suits by the people who were defrauded. No different than any other commercial relationship that exists in the private sector. However,
the problem is that when it comes to something specific like educational fraud, you might want to have a department with the specific expertise to investigate claims like that. Like, you can't expect regular fucking police officers to manage all investigations. Oh, here I and some other students feel we've been defrauded by this private university. Get Sheriff Wiggums on the job. It helps to have agencies who have specific expertise when it comes to those kinds of problems.
When you have a bureaucracy at the Department of Education that's spending that $80 billion at a moment where school choice programs across the country are underfunded,
they should be
not
zero
even
funded.
Close, which is a better use of money. Put that $80 billion.
He said civil suit, so he wants random citizens to do all themselves. Yeah, because what he's actually talking about, again, the plan conservatives have for schooling is the unchecked power of Christian conservative schools, private Christian conservative schools. So tax money should go to them. School choice should take people out of like inner city schools and leave them to rot with no money. And if you have like a problem with private schooling, you need to fund your own civil suit, you know?
Budget in the pockets of parents across this country, be about 1.6 billion per state in this union. It's not even close, which is a better use of funds. And I think you avoid a lot of the bureaucratic corruption. And you're right, the people who sit on top of those agencies are appointed by a democratically elected US president. 99.999% of those employees do not fit that description. To the contrary, they're protected by-
Yeah, no shit, you can't have, what? You can't have appointed every single, what? What does that mean?
I think bad policy, but so-called civil service protections that have stopped the US president or the duly elected representatives or even cabinet secretaries from firing those employees, which creates a culture of rot, of laziness, of ineffectiveness, and yes, even of corruption in many of those agencies. And so I have a simple proposition. I think the people who we elect to
This is bullshit, by the way, okay? What so many people say what so many people mean when they say anti-corruption is that they're anti-bureaucracy. And sorry, bureaucracies are part and parcel to the modern state, and they are necessary, and in many cases they are good. Bureaucracies allow for literally all of the civic complexity that allows for anything more complicated than fucking feudalism. It is one thing to be anti-corruption. Everyone should be anti-corruption. But the idea of like, oh yeah, I'm anti-corruption, by which I mean I don't like the fact that not every bureaucrat in the Department of Education is like personally elected. That's just insane. That's completely insane.
On the government, they ought to be the ones who actually run the government. And if there are people who disagree with me, if they're the people who I don't vote for, I accept that. But we live in a constitutional republic where at least the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who are actually running it, when most of the policy decisions made-
No. You can't elect every single member of every bureaucracy in the federal government. There's a third of 1 billion people in this country. You can't, elect the department undersecretary of the third branch of the office of the local regional, but no, what? This renders democracy meaningless. We have a system where our presidents will appoint the leaders of these federal administrative divisions, and they make hiring decisions accordingly. But the idea that because these bureaucratic office workers are unelected means that they're all making partial political decisions is completely bullshit. The leaders of these administrative departments are appointed in the presidential cabinet. The decisions they're making are being shaped by the leader of the branch.
Regulating our energy sector, to our healthcare sector, to financial markets, to education, come from unelected bureaucrats in the federal government. And that serves neither Republicans nor Democrats nor any American well. And that's gonna change on my watch as president.
Whoa!
Let's talk a little bit more about school choice. So school choice vouchers, they tend to be statewide programs that take public funding away from public schools and redirects that money to private institutions that do not have to abide by similar standards, education standards that public schools have to abide by. And so how do you consider the lack of standards and how that might play a role.
Getting private schooling in a lot of cases is kind of like a slightly diminished and much more expensive version of being homeschooled, where you'll be really, really, really well educated on some specific subjects, but it'll come at the cost of some weird gaps in your knowledge and also a general social awkwardness. At least in my experience, though homeschooling leads to it much worse than private education does. And it doesn't always happen that way, of course.
In a system in which voters would not have the right to vote unless, in your dream scenario, they pass a civics test. What if those public dollars are being funneled to certain religious private schools?
Vaush, the members of the cabinet also have to be confirmed by Congress. Yes, but in practice, the president usually gets their free pick of cabinet leaders. Like, the Department of Treasury or whatever may be full of bureaucrats who are not directly elected, but who you put in charge of the department through your appointing as president does have a huge amount of influence in how the department actually behaves. You might say TYT handled this better than outlets like CNN, but I still feel like they're platforming him too much and not challenging him on some stuff. They're challenging him on like everything. If this is bad platforming, then I will never be able to do good platforming.
That do a poor job in educating their students about American history, civics, basically what they need to know, the education they need in order to pass the civics test that you think people need to pass in order to be able to vote.
So as it relates to standardized testing as one metric among many, and other metrics also track it, it's actually the reverse that you see that's true. Public schools are badly failing across this country. And if you look at the correlation between the schools that spend—
His solution to this is literally to fund them less.
The most money per student, Anna, those are the schools that achieve the poorest results 90% of the time across this country. So the irony is, if a parent is moving a kid from a school that spends more money per student to a school that spends less money per student, 90% of the time they're moving to a school that actually has higher achievement as it relates to standardized tests and other metrics. So my view, I actually have a somewhat radical—
So the point that he's making here, so this is like, how you can lie with statistics? This is an example of lying with statistics. Schools that are not doing that well on their own funding because they don't receive a lot of money from property taxes get more money per student from the government, because the government is trying to supplement the lower amount of money they get from the local property taxes. And as a consequence of that, the way it appears is if you only look at money given by government, the more money a school gets, the worse that school tends to be in terms of educational attainment. But that's because the only money you're looking at is the aid money that's being given to compensate for the lack of money received through property taxes and other normal sources. So this is, again, it's lying through data, basically. You're only taking a look at one source of funding, and it's the source of funding that scales in proportion to how you are beforehand. So the more funding you get, the more you were beforehand. And as a consequence of that, it's like, oh, well, actually, the more money you get, the worse you do, which is just bullshit. If you take a look at total money available to a school, you will see a much better representation, or a much better correlation between the amount of money they have and how good their students are doing. Does that make sense?
Idea on this. Let's say it's in New York City, where I can give you the actual numbers. It's $40,000 per student per year in the failing public schools, to good charter schools or private schools or even better public schools that are spending $20,000 or $15,000 per student per year.
Because they're getting their money elsewhere. Obviously, it's a private school. Where do you think the money is coming from? No shit. He's like, yeah, if you take a look at these private rich schools where rich people go, then they're getting less federal money, but they're doing better. What about the other sources of money they're receiving?
I think that parent, that kid, should be able to take half that difference with them. If you put that in the kid's account, invest it normally, that kid graduates with a $250,000 graduation gift. It's not even close what accounts for a better use of money. Now, here's the problem. Those schools that are producing those—
He's just flatly bullshitting here. The idea is what if instead of funding the schools, we just let your child move into a charter or private school with Christian conservatives education, where we don't have a standardized education to teach them that slavery wasn't done by Jews. And at the end of all of it, they'll get all the money they would have gotten given to them in their stead to that federal school, which wouldn't be that much, and it's total nonsense. He's just making shit up.
Poor results, they have one constraint that a lot of those private schools and charter schools don't. Those are teachers' unions.
The number one way everyone lies about schools is that private schools choose their students. Public schools have to take everyone. Yep, it's one of the same reasons that healthcare cost per individual is higher with Medicare than it is with regular private insurance, which leads a lot of people to be like, whoa, Medicare is so inefficient. Why is the cost per person so high with Medicare? Because Medicare has to take fucking all the poor people. Or well, is it all the old people? I actually forget. I mix up Medicare and Medicare. I think Medicare is the old people one, right? In that case, it'd be old people. Same. Both? Oh, I mixed them up. Sorry. Whatever. Medicare is old people mostly. Yeah, okay. Whatever the case may be, the point of the public insurance system there is that they have to take the people who are either poor or old and are therefore like higher risk insurance cases. Whereas private insurance, like, I don't know, Kaiser Permanente or whatever, can choose to reject you based on a number of things, and it costs money that you have to have in order to be able to use it. You understand? So in both cases, with education and with healthcare, you see disproportionately worse results in the public option because they have to take everyone.
And so I've had actually both experiences in my own life. I went to a not great public school, 1st through 8th grade. And then my parents decided to work extra hard and make some sacrifices to be able to send me to a private school for high school in Cincinnati. Just look at the last several years. In the COVID pandemic, the Cincinnati public schools were closed for a full year and then almost a full next year. This high school that I went to, there were 4 total days that were closed the entire time. So it's not that COVID only affects kids at public schools or teachers at public schools. To the contrary, these teachers unions are failing our kids, failing the very constituents, the very members of the public they're supposedly serving.
The reason Republicans go after teachers unions so much is because they don't like teachers, and teachers unions are a proxy. There are problems with teachers unions, but they are problems that exist in many bureaucracies all over the place. They are just like systemic issues that are very difficult to deal with and should be dealt with. But again, you know, it's a complicated matter. You know, they go after teachers unions because they really want to go after teachers. They don't like teachers because they don't like education, because educated people vote blue.
So yes, I do think competition, there's no perfect solution, but I think competition is the next best solution to perfect. And that, I think, is going to hold the public schools teachers' feet to the fire, get rid of those teachers unions. And yes, we ought to compete such that our educational system goes back to being about the achievement of our students rather than employment opportunities for these union members. And that's just the hard truth.
It also lets them be anti-union. Last video, we're doing so well.
You've said that you're against secularism. So which religion should rule us all?
None. That is the answer.
Well, isn't that secularism?
That's not secularism. I think
that is secularism.
Capital S secularism is something that has used a substitute religious-like worldview to foist that affirmatively onto multiple institutions across this country.
Actually, atheism is the real religion. And I know that because atheists believe things sometimes, and believing stuff is like a religion, man.
I think that there are many forcible agendas. If you have to pledge allegiance to a diversity, equity, inclusion agenda as a function.
You don't. You don't have to pledge allegiance to it. That's not how that works.
Of getting a job. I think that is a Title VII violation, civil rights violation today. So I don't believe that there should be any religion, secular, humanism, or otherwise, foisted upon anyone, certainly not through the government.
Okay, so the practical purpose of this rhetoric is him saying, I'm for equality of religion, and for that reason, I don't think we should have the religion of wokeness forced on people. That's it. It really is that stupid and blunt and crude and idiotic. It is that bad. That is what he is saying here.
My view is you have free expression in the United States. I'm an ardent defender of religious liberty. Whatever your religion is, you have the right to practice it as long as you're not explicitly harming somebody else.
That's literally secularism, Vivek. That's literally the definition of secularism.
Okay, that's actually, well then, Cenk?
Well, no, because if we had secularism, then why is it that people are woke? Why do people believe in gods like diversity and tolerance?
I would say is respectfully, whatever word you use to describe it. Now I've written a whole book about this, and so we can debate the vocabulary. But in concept, I believe that every religion should be practicable in the United States with religious liberty as long as you're not harming somebody else. And the government cannot establish any one religion as the governing religion for the United States of America.
And yet the Biden administration has established diversity, equity, and inclusion as the religion of America. Wokeness and critical race theory and transgender are the religions of America. Yes, he is describing secularism. He just wants to frame wokeness as a religion.
Good news.
That's
in the U.S.
That's what the Constitution says.
That's exactly right.
I
That's in
believe
the
in
U.S.
this thing called the
Constitution. That is why the U.S. Constitution is considered the first secular constitution. But okay. Now we've all done a literacy and civics test.
Well, look, I think it's in the First Amendment for a reason. Free speech, free expression, freedom of religious choice, and non-establishment. Yes, those are foundational to our constitutional republic. I do think that many of
Vivek failing his civics test again. Yoink! Again, fucking no voting for you, buddy. You're a Zoomer, right?
the philosophies that are foisted on kids, the hostility towards schools that may want to adopt certain religious worldviews as private schools, the hostility towards somebody who says if you don't approve of a certain kind of marriage, you still have to officiate that marriage using the state's force to do it. That's what I mean by capital S secularism, to say that you are forcing somebody to do.
What? You need to do a religion to do a marriage? What? The state will marry you. You just have to do paperwork. What?
Something that mean by the hostility towards somebody who says if you don't approve of a certain kind of marriage, you still have to officiate that marriage using the state's force to do it. That's what I mean by capital S secularism, to say that you are forcing somebody to do something that violates their religion.
You don't. Wait, guys, am I wrong on this? I'm pretty sure if a priest doesn't want to officiate a gay wedding, they don't have to. It's just that the state has to recognize the marriage. Marriage, the legal entity of being married, is something that the government has to recognize. But if you're a religious official, you don't have to do that. I think it might vary by state. Are priests forced to officiate gay weddings? No. No. First Amendment protection. They don't. Yeah, no, I'm not seeing it. If your religion doesn't recognize like gay marriage or whatever, like okay, die. But also marriage is a legal construct that is officiated by the state. He's talking about government officials not needing to do marriage license. Then maybe you shouldn't have been a government employee, you stupid fat bitch. Oh, I'm sorry. Does the government employee have to do things for the government and not acting as some kind of self-designated clergyman? Kim fucking Ghoul.
Using the government's power to do it. That is what I reject. And so call that what you want. It's not the vocabulary.
Oh, does someone have to do your job?
That matters. It's the concept. I am against that. And you may disagree with me on that, but at least we can smoke out where our likely disagreement is rather than worrying about the verbiage.
Nice meme. All right, that was pretty great. Nicely done, TYT. The T's were YTing, is what I'm saying. Nicely done. Well done. Good shit. Love that.